Hello and welcome back to Level Paths, where we're looking for the glory of God in clear view. And it's been a while since we've been together for this live stream to work our way through the prison epistles of Paul. And that's mainly because my life has been in transition for the last couple months. But I'm excited to get back into the study of Philippians and see what it is that we can glean again from these letters that Paul wrote while he was in isolation, while he was in some circumstances that were different than his normal routine of life, which involved traveling and teaching and meeting people out on the missionary trail. But here he's in prison. He's isolated. He's no doubt lonely. He does have those who are helping him with correspondence and so forth so that the ministry can continue, but it's not business as usual. And for us, even though we're here we are in September, this whole COVID thing started back in March, if you remember, for the United States at least. And here we are still working our way through it. School has been modified and it's not normal for us, and some activities are still modified. A lot of us wearing masks out and about in public. So still very different living situation than what we're used to. And so I still think that these prison epistles speak to us and help us to understand how do we follow Christ when our normal routine and days are different and challenging. 3 verse 1 today, just one verse, and it's a transition verse. And we see that with the first word, finally. And again, I'm looking at the ESV translation of the scriptures. And this word, finally, it's an okay translation here, I suppose, but what would help is if it was something like moving on. So he's completed his report about Timothy and Epaphroditus in chapter 2, and he's moving on to new content. Not really new content, but another subject matter. He's completed one, he's moving on to another. So something more like moving on, because he's not going to end the letter here. He's actually going to end the letter in chapter 4. So moving on, he says, my brothers, rejoice in the Lord. So he returns to the topic of joy. He gives them the command to rejoice in the Lord. Remember, Paul doesn't look at his primary circumstances as his imprisonment. His primary circumstance is that he's in the Lord. He's in Christ. That's his primary circumstance. He knows that he's in the Lord. He's in Christ. He's united with his death and resurrection. Nothing can change that. His secondary circumstances happen to be his imprisonment. And so that does us well to remember that imperative to us. Rejoice in the Lord. COVID, coronavirus, whatever other challenging circumstances you may find yourself in, family, marriage, church conflict, business conflict, whatever the situation, that's not your primary circumstance. Your primary circumstance is that you're in Christ. And so he commands us to rejoice in Christ. And he goes on to say, to write the same things to you is no trouble to me and is safe for you. So he's going to write some things that he's already said before. Now, it's not referring, at least in my opinion, to the immediate context. He's not going to rehash the report concerning Timothy and Epaphroditus. Rather, he's going, the content that is ahead of us, starting in verse 2, is something that he has previously spoken to them about. And what he's going to get into is a warning about the self-righteous and a reminder about the power of the resurrection. And so it's no trouble to him, he says, to write these same things again. That is to say, he has no reluctance whatsoever to repeat these things. No reluctance to repeat the power of the resurrection and the warning about self-righteousness. And the reason, again, that I think that he's moving on to this matter that he's spoken to them about in previous correspondence or in his visit to them is because he also says that this is safe for you. that he have no reluctance to repeat these matters about the warning toward self-righteousness and the power of the resurrection. It makes sense that this would be the safe content to which he's referring. That is, it's safe and secure for me to repeat these things that I'm about to say, that we've spoken about previously. And so for those reasons, I think it's the moving on. I think that it's his lack of reluctance to speak on these things and his reference to them being safe and secure things, content, about which he wants to speak. I think for those reasons, I think that the thing that he's pointing us to comes to us in verses 2 down through 11 and following. He's going to talk about and develop what is true righteousness and where do we find that righteousness, and he's going to place it securely in the resurrected Christ. And so he's going to teach them again, and at least for us, this is going to be our first time in this particular content in this letter. I still think in the prison epistles, one of the things that he's developing is this union with Christ. He's reminded of the significance of this union given his secondary circumstances of imprisonment. So I hope this is a blessing to you today as we continue on to look for the glory of God in clear view through a study of Paul's prison epistles, particularly Philippians at this time. God bless you. We'll see you next time.